Hello and welcome back to Sports Scene. This is episode 4 of season 14, and we are so glad that you all could join us. My name is Annenberg, and I'm one of the sports co-directors of Annenberg Media. But today I thought I'd jump in the anchor chair with our awesome analysts, Brooke Rohde and Will Camardella. How are you two doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing awesome. Ready to talk about
everything.
Well,
we have I didn't mean to cut you off there, Brooke, but we do have an awesome show, so I want to just jump right into it with our first segment of the day. What do you expect from USC football, given its schedule that was released yesterday? And while we're talking here, I'll just encourage everyone viewing to just go pull up the schedule so that you can see what we're talking about. But Brooke, let's start with you. What do you expect from USC football?
First off, I think we couldn't have asked for a better schedule. This was our first free Friday game since 2009. Thank God. Thankfully, Larry Scott's going to be gone from the Pac-12. So looks like we were kind of free from those finally Friday games. So we got no Oregon and no Washington, which I feel like is a huge deal for our Trojans. And then I believe that we're going to go 11-1 on the season with our toughest game against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, might be having some technical difficulties here, but Will, I will just throw it over to you, and we will see if we can't get Brooke back on here.
Yeah, the schedule makes a fan feel optimistic. The way the Trojans played last year, not so much. Yeah, the conference schedule isn't too tough, but you still have non-conference games against Notre Dame, against BYU, two teams that finished ahead of USC in the final season poll. By the way, their season openers against San Jose State. People think that's an easy game, but hey, they won 7-1 last year. That's not nothing. That's a legitimate team that's going to be coming into the Coliseum in week 1. So, yes, the schedule has a fan feeling optimistic, but there's no question the Trojans really have to improve their level of play.
I think this is also going to be a make or break season for Clay Helton. I feel like we say this every year, but obviously he needs to go if USC can't get into those double-digit wins. I feel like USC needs to be able to separate themselves during this season, bring those key recruits in, getting Keaton Slovis back up and running, getting our running game going. I feel like we have really 2 games in October that are going to be huge. It's going to be against Utah on the 9th and then followed by a bye and back into Notre Dame. So Utah's been one of the most consistent teams in the Pac-12, going 58-27 since 2014. So I think Utah is going to be a tough matchup for the Trojans.
There are a ton of tough matchups here, but I mean, let's be honest. If USC can't win the Pac-12 South with this schedule, that's an extraordinary disappointment. But I look at the schedule and I see team after team. You have a game against Oregon State. They had a bad record last year, but they beat Oregon. They can beat the top teams. They have a game against Arizona State and Arizona back-to-back weeks. USC almost lost both of those games with really bad starts. UCLA, same sort of deal. So, yes, the matchups are all games they won last year, but they were so close, I could easily see them going the other way this time around.
So you don't think that this Trojan team is going to be better than last season? I feel like the Trojans have gotten a good schedule of recruits coming in, Corey Foreman being one of the number 1 recruits. The Trojans have all of our running backs back, even though we lost Tyler Vaughns and Elijah Griffin, who are one of our top starters on the defensive end and wide receiver. Us Trojans is going to have a really good offseason, and I believe that with our easy schedule playing Washington State, Oregon State, Colorado, Cal, I just believe that USC is going to have a good schedule going, and I think if they get a good rhythm, we're going to have some contention with Notre Dame when it comes to the college football playoff selection.
I just don't
I just do want to point out one thing that, Washington State at the Coliseum for sure is maybe an easy game. We saw how that played out last season, but when you go into Pullman, it's a little bit different, right? I mean, Will, do you feel that way? Is that how you see? Do you see that game being a little bit more difficult than maybe it projects because it is on the road?
I mean, on the road obviously creates it's more tougher challenges. I'm not too worried about Washington State games specifically because I think those two teams are on way different levels. But let me tell you, I don't know when I could have said last year that the USC Trojans football team was in a rhythm. I mean, they were constantly playing from behind. They were constantly having to come back, and finally it bit them against Oregon. And when they're playing more teams on Oregon's level and less teams on Washington State's level, which is what they're doing this year, yeah, they could absolutely lose a few of these games. I see them in the 7-9 win range, not double digits.
Really? That's interesting to hear because thinking about last year, we were in full COVID mode each week. We didn't even know if we were even going to be able to play football. There was COVID cases left and right. And teams getting canceled and games getting postponed and stuff getting flipped around. I feel like everything was so up in the air last season that threw off our entire rhythm. Coming back into 2021 with a whole reset, with the vaccine, with us having a good offseason, with the team coming into the summer being able to train every single day, I think our Trojans are going to be able to really surprise some teams and really come out hard and kind of redeem themselves from their beginning of the season last year.
Every team that played organized sports over the past year had to deal with COVID. Every single one. And I'm not trying to downplay COVID. Obviously, it's serious. But let's be clear. The best teams found a way. They didn't make excuses out of it.
I see that. I got that. But for sure, I mean, I think that USC is going to be able to really get their act going. I think it's finally time that they are able to get on that national championship level, coming back into the college football playoff, having a good run. They just need to win those consistent games. They need to start off strong, winning against San Jose State. I know Stanford was a tough one last year. I know Stanford was kind of coming off of a good run. So yeah, coming through and just winning well is going to be a big thing for us.
I want to pose a question to the both of you about this schedule. Is there a stretch of it that you feel like will really define USC season? I kind of look at that post-bye stretch, which they start by playing a road game at Notre Dame. And that's also one of 3 out of 4 road games in that stretch. So they play 3 road games out of 4 there. And then they play UCLA. I know it's kind of hard to say, just the second half of the season basically is a defining stretch. But, is there a few games in there that you see, this is going to determine what USC's season and how it is kind of seen by everyone?
I think the games in early October are going to be those really defining ones. I think the first one at Colorado on October 2nd. I mean, remembering back to 2019, we almost lost to Colorado for the first time ever, only winning by 4, and then coming back, doubling back and winning against Utah in the Coliseum on October 9th. And then, of course, getting that bye and gearing up for Notre Dame that next week. I think that stretch of 3 weeks is going to be huge for our Trojans to win those games against Colorado and Utah, and then just getting ready for Notre Dame because we know that's going to be a grinder.
Well, Brooke, you talked about national championship expectations, and I agree those should be the expectations. So what 2 weeks could be bigger than their final 2 home games against UCLA and BYU? Yes, BYU is replacing Zach Wilson, but they have a solid football team up and down, ranked 16th in the country. Again, that's higher than USC. I mean, if you really want to make your mark late in the stretch, I mean, there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on the UCLA game, obviously at home with the rivalry. And then BYU is going to be an extremely closely watched game. So I think if USC is really trying to compete on the national level, those are the 2 games that they absolutely have to put up excellent showings to end on a high note.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And BYU beat USC in 2019 before Zach Wilson was Zach Wilson, right? So I think that you make a good point that that's not necessarily going to be BYU is losing a lot of starters. Don't get me wrong. They're probably not going to be the same team that they were in 2020. But I do agree with you, Will, that I think that could be, not necessarily a trap game, but I guess I would say one that is going to be important and maybe a little bit more difficult than people are expecting. Speaking of trap games, are there any that you see on USC's schedule? Anyone that sticks out to you as a game where they might be looking ahead to their next opponent, or and they overlook an opponent that they really should have been preparing more for?
Yeah, look at Arizona State on the road. That's 2 weeks after the Notre Dame game, followed by a home game against Arizona. USC, especially if they play well against Notre Dame, could be riding high going into Arizona State, and they better not rest on their laurels because let me tell you, that team has coaches. I love Herm Edwards. I love Marvin Lewis in the spot he is right now, and Antonio Pierce has done an extraordinary job coaching the defense. With all the miracle wins the Trojans had last year, the Week 1 game against Arizona State was by far the most astounding. And I will point out that if they do not come in with an excellent game plan coming off 2 big weeks, that's absolutely a game I could see them dropping on the road.
Brooke, real quick, trap game. Go ahead.
Trap game, Colorado. Only reason is because coming back to 2019, they only won by 4. They're going up to altitude where obviously Colorado is going to have an advantage coming up to the mountains. Coming back to Utah, they're going to have to do well. And then against Notre Dame, I think that's where they're going to lose their consistency, is probably against the Colorado team.
Well, you kind of did my job for me there of giving me a transition to our next segment, because we're talking about altitude, and now we're talking about USC basketball, which is coming off of that very unfortunate mountain road trip where they played Colorado and Utah, lost both of those games. Neither of them were particularly close, and they now sit third in the Pac-12 standings behind UCLA and Oregon. And again, I would say to any of our viewers watching right now, go ahead and pull up the standings right now. I do believe that UCLA is sitting at 13-4, and Oregon is a half game back of them. And so USC, where they are sitting, needs to win both of these games remaining that they have against Stanford and UCLA, and then get a little bit of help from one of UCLA and Oregon, who do play each other tonight. So I guess I'll pose a question to you first, Will. Who wins the regular season Pac-12 men's championship?
Yeah, real quick, USC needs to basically win out to win the conference, and then they need either UCLA to lose tonight, or for Oregon, if they win, they need to lose to Oregon State, basically. So they would want UCLA to win or Oregon to lose to Oregon State. That's the two ways they can get in if they win both of their games. They have Stanford tonight. They have UCLA over the weekend. I do believe they win both of those games.
It seems like they're relying on a lot of other teams' performances to pull out that Pac-12 title. If we think about 2-3 weeks ago, they had it in the bag, and they just totally dropped it when they went up to play Utah and Colorado. This is a really stab in the heart to me. I feel like this is all too familiar for USC and Pac-12 basketball fans, where USC starts out super strong in the season. We get super excited where they're like, oh my gosh, like we're going to win the Pac-12 tournament. We're going to make our run to the NCAA. And then we just go right down. I think that Oregon is really having a good showing right now. So I believe that if Oregon's able to win their game against UCLA tonight and then win against Oregon State on Sunday, I think they have the Pac-12 tournament in the bag.
I don't know. I think UCLA wins tonight. So it really is going to come down, if you want to assume USC beats Stanford, which I am, because USC is the better team. It's going to come down to what happens against UCLA this Saturday at 1 p.m. I think USC actually is going to be very well equipped. I think a little time off with the coaching staff, they're going to revamp the defense a little bit. They won that game against UCLA on the back of the defense, and I think they'll do it again.
I think that they have to. Like, it's much needed. Looking at their stats from the Utah game, they were outscored by Utah in the second half. Utah is ranked 9th in the Pac-12. They lost to Cal, the worst team in the Pac-12 conference. They lost to Washington, and we almost beat Utah by almost 15 points back in early January. We were having the worst shooting performance that we had this previous game on Sunday, only shooting 37% from the field. So Andy Enfield and our team needs to make a lot of changes for us to really flip it around these last two games.
Yeah, the shooting's a concern. I get it, but I think it's a little bit fluky. You know, two games, okay. You're against Colorado and Utah. You're not shooting the ball well. I think Evan Mobley in the Utah game was 2 of 7. He was 6 of 13 against Colorado. I think that's going to change. I think Mobley is going to be able to be a little bit more consistent, let the guys around him contribute a little bit more. I mean, the big positive out of the Utah game was Drew Peterson shot 8 of 15, 19 points. Maybe Mobley works as more of a decoy down low. Isaiah Mobley's only going to be getting healthier. I think this team is ready to turn the quarter, and I think it's just two horrific showings that aren't going to carry on.
Let's hope so. I'm just hoping that this was kind of a wake-up call for our team. I think we did a really good job early in the season with our grad transfers, Taj Edey, Isaiah White, Drew Peterson, like you mentioned, has been playing amazing. So I think for the Trojans to be able to really turn it around, because obviously as a Trojan fan, I hope that they're able to, but we just really need to help with our teammates getting the shots up, hitting our threes, just being consistent all around. But going back to the Oregon team, I think our Oregon teams, you can't ignore them. I think that they've been able to shoot very well in these past couple games. They've held their own in the second half. And we got to think about their head coach, Dana Altman. The USC and Andy Enfield have never made – I don't think they've made it to the Pac-12 tournament or the NCAA championship in a couple of years. And I feel like Dana Altman has the most experience for the NCAA tourneys. So when it comes to those seedings, this is where they're going to have a big opportunity over the Trojans.
Yeah, I mean, I agree Oregon's going to be well equipped for the NCAA tournament, but we're talking about the regular season right now. And I think UCLA in the regular season is going to be the better team tonight. Moving on, I'll talk about the UCLA game a bit more, because it's very interesting when you compare what happened in the first game against UCLA to what happened in the Colorado and Utah games, which most people would say are the worst two games of the season. The offensive production was basically the same. USC scored 66 points against UCLA. That's well below their season average, which is almost 75 points, but the defense played so well in that game, holding their opponents to 48. That was the difference. And I think USC, even if the shooting slump continues a little bit longer, can be coached up well enough, maybe if they move over to a little bit of more of a zone defense, to actually win that game.
Well, I want to make a quick point here about that UCLA game, and I do feel like we're maybe jumping ahead a little bit. Maybe that conversation that we had about trap games for football could apply to the Stanford game that we have coming up tonight. Since we kind of jumped just straight to look at it ahead at UCLA, but since you mentioned it, I would like to ask both of you how you feel about the return of UCLA's two really good big men in Cody Riley and Jalen Hill. Neither of them played in that game against USC, I should say, earlier in this season. So how big of a difference do you think that makes? Personally, I think it makes a world of difference because USC just kind of dominated around the basket in that game, and I think that was a huge reason why their defense was so good. But I pose the question to you first, Brooke. Does the return of those two make a major difference in your mind?
I think yes. Obviously, like not having their two best bigs in the games when we played against them is obviously going to be a blow for UCLA. But I think we're thinking about that. We have Evan Mobley, probably going to be going top 3 in the NBA. This guy's a monster under the basket. He's able to get every rebound. He can box out. He can hold his own and not get that charge against the UCLA bigs. So I think even with the UCLA bigs coming back, obviously it's going to pose a threat to our Trojans. But having Evan Mobley and Isaiah White as big men, I think that we're going to be able to hold up just as well as we did in previous games.
Yeah, I agree. There's no game where USC should be losing the battle on the boards. I don't care who was injured the first time, and I don't care who's coming back now. It doesn't make a difference, of course, but Evan Mobley has to find a way, either way, to be the best player on the floor down low. I mean, even Isaiah Mobley, his brother, he had 10 rebounds when he was really not shooting the ball well against Utah. He went 2 for 8, but he still found a way to contribute in other ways. And it's different guys every night for USC on the outside who can contribute around them. Some nights it's Peterson. Some nights it's other guys like Tajidi. Evan Mobley, if he's having a little bit too much trouble down there, he when he's playing his best, he knows how to facilitate the basketball and allow other guys to contribute.
And then another question that I would have is you both kind of mentioned the offense as a major problem on this mountain road trip that just happened. How do you think that USC should go about trying to unstick that offense? It's been kind of an issue for them at times this season, but is there anything that you think that they can do to kind of get them going a little bit, get maybe Evan Mobley some easy looks? He didn't have a great game. He didn't have a great game in either of those games. I don't think really anybody did. But what do you think that they can do to unstick the offense?
I just think they just need to be smart with the basketball. All season, Evan Mobley's been able to dominate under the basket. I think getting the ball to him more and getting his shots up is going to be able to help him get into more of a rhythm. I think getting the ball to Taj Edey and Ethan Anderson, I think Ethan Anderson's kind of been a little overlooked this whole season since he was injured at the beginning, but getting their shots up from beyond the arc and taking people on one-on-one and just really driving to the basket, because I know that we're able to hold our own in the paint, is going to be a way that our Trojans can get back into that rhythm and get back into the shooting that they were doing. So I think just utilizing what we've been doing all season long, using both our Mobley brothers, are going to be awesome.
Sometimes the best offense is a good defense. And if USC can hold an opponent under 80 points for once and actually be able to move the ball in transition and let their athleticism really take over when the defense isn't set, I think that's going to be a big difference. That also means they have to rebound the basketball, right? That USC has not won a game this year. This includes the last Colorado game. This includes both Colorado games where their opponents out-rebounded them.
Yeah. I think also, I agree with what you said, Will, that our defense can obviously be a big factor, but obviously we need to get points on the board. I think with Taj Edey and Ethan Anderson and Isaiah White and all of I feel like we have a really deep bench that we're going to be able to utilize more when it comes into postseason. Just getting everybody healthy, getting our Mobley brothers back in sync. I think they're super dangerous when they're able to pass the ball and communicate without even speaking, because they've been playing with each other their entire lives. Evan and Isaiah, I think if they're healthy, our team's just going to follow in their footsteps. And it's all about just getting those points up early and not forcing those turnovers. I noticed in our past couple games, we've kind of been forcing unneeded turnovers that have been just sloppy and just not looking good on paper. So just getting that ball under control and just being smart with it is just where we need to start at the beginning.
Yeah, the things that I look to as being very important is the assist to turnover ratio. I think you kind of mentioned that, Brooke. Both of those mountain games, it was negative for USC, so they had more turnovers than assists. And then also in both of those games, their opponents shot over 50% from 3. So you can mention the defense and say, oh, it's one of the strengths of this team, but it kind of let them down, especially from the outside during that stretch. So we will see how that plays out. and going to be some exciting basketball in the Pac-12 here. But we're going to jump into our hot take segment of the day. Take it to the NFL now. Take it away from the college ranks. Let's go professional. Will, what do you have for us?
Dak Prescott will not be the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys come week 1 of this year. It has been an absolute soap opera how that relationship has gone between owner Jerry Jones and quarterback Dak Prescott. The relationship is broken. Dak Prescott is asking for more money than I believe Jerry Jones is comfortable giving. He's going to let Prescott test the open market. I think Prescott wants to test the open market, and I think he'll be on another team.
I can see where you're coming from, but why not just make Dak Prescott our franchise tag? I think it was super unfortunate that Dak Prescott had that season-ending ankle injury early in the season, but we've got the Dallas Cowboys has the team for him to build around. We had one of the top offenses last season before Dak Prescott even got injured. We were averaging 32.6 points per game before his injury. We got Lael Collins coming back. He wasn't even starting for right tackle when our offense was popping off. And there's all these rumors that Russell Wilson's going to be coming to the Dallas Cowboys, and I just think that's funny. I think with Dak Prescott being able to sign an extension with our Cowboys team, they're going to be super dangerous. So why would we trade Dak Prescott out of the Cowboys, bring Russell Wilson in, and have to completely restart? I just don't think that's going to happen.
I believe it was George Young who said, when they tell you it's not about the money, it's about the money. If they sign Prescott to the salary cap, that means $37 million guaranteed dollars to a quarterback coming off a compound fracture in a year after COVID, where the salary cap could be coming down. You're already paying Ezekiel Elliott a contract at running back worth $15 million in an average annual value. I don't believe that that's an investment that Dallas is going to make.
I understand where you're coming from then, that Dak Prescott, there's cap space, he's not getting paid what he wants to, but why would he not stay in Dallas? Where else would he want to go? What other team can you see him fitting into? I think that the Cowboys is just the perfect place for him. I know there's been strain with the contracts and money and everything, but if he's able to get healthy, we've got a new offensive line coach coming in. We got Mike Nolan was released from our defense. I just feel like there's a lot of ways that the Cowboys have been able to improve in the offseason around Dak Prescott. So the number one thing Prescott needs to do is just get healthy.
I don't think Jerry Jones believes that Dak Prescott is worth the money that Dak Prescott is asking for. And let's be clear about what he's asking for. He's asking for Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson money. Top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL is what he's asking for. And Jerry Jones is so petty about it and so standing up so much against that when Dallas put up their season highlight tape on Twitter, Dak Prescott was not on the screen. He was not in the video, right? So the reality is, if that's the money Prescott believes he can command, is there another team in the NFL that will be willing to pay it when I don't think Dallas is going to go there? I believe that there is.
I would like to make one point very quickly. I see what you're saying on that, Will. I'm kind of playing the mediator here, but I do have, if you're going to take it to social media, I'm going to have to throw this at you. Blake Jarwin, who's one of the Cowboys tight ends, posted a picture on Instagram of him being hugged by Prescott a few weeks ago. And then the caption was, "Want to run it back in a few months." And Prescott responded on his story by saying, "That's the only way I see it." So it seems like he wants to be back. It seems like, obviously the money is going to be important, but, Brooke, I certainly feel like that supports what you were saying about the idea that he does want to be back, and he'll, maybe try to make it work. Maybe not take too much of a salary cut or anything, but I wouldn't say that the relationship is frayed necessarily to the point that Will is kind of saying.
Well, in a perfect world, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
In a perfect world, from Dak Prescott's perspective, he's the starting quarterback for the Cowboys this year. But again, it's going to come down to dollars and cents. And if Jerry Jones is not willing to offer what Dak Prescott believes he can command, then yeah, he may look at other options.
I'm gonna agree with Aiden on this part. I think obviously the money is important. I mean, you got to make a living somehow. But what about the team culture? Why would Dak Prescott? He doesn't want to leave. It would be different than going back to the Russell Wilson argument, saying obviously he hasn't demanded a trade, but he doesn't seem happy with his program. He doesn't seem happy with his offensive line. He got sacked numerous times last season. That's a different situation where the quarterback doesn't want to be at the program. But in Prescott's situation, I think that he wants to be back in Dallas. He wants to get healthy. He wants to start from square one with his offense and his defense. We've got some drafted free agency space where we can focus on our defensive side. Obviously, Dallas needs a top tier linebacker. We need a run stop defensive tackle. And of course, we need a safety, obviously. But if Dak Prescott wants to be in Dallas, the money will come. So we need Prescott healthy, and we need him to want to be in Dallas. And that's what he's saying, especially based on the social media post Aiden was talking about.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
All right.
Football is not baseball. And again, Dallas has a more limited budget to work with. Are they going to commit $40 million over 10 years to a quarterback coming off a compact fracture? Jerry Jones doesn't seem convinced that he wants to do that. Yes, he wants to stay. I grant that. But at the end of the day, he's a free agent if Dallas does not apply the franchise tag. The difference with Wilson is I think his team still has his back. They want to improve the team for him.
Well, I see your point there, and I'll flip it around and kind of pose this question to you now. Will, you don't think that Dak Prescott is going to be with the Cowboys? What team do you think that he's going to be with?
This may be just as equally a hot take, and this isn't guarantee full on.
A 2-for-1 hot take on Sports Scene this week. Everyone watching.
I'm not guaranteeing this, but in the interest of guarantees and Joe Namath, how about the New York Jets?
Wow.
How about the New York Jets?
Not our boy Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold is done in New York. I'm telling you, the receivers don't like him. I think the GM is not ready to pay Sam. I think they're going to look to trade him probably to a team like San Francisco. They're going to be on the open market with a ton of cap space. They could go the Deshaun Watson route. They could go the Zach Wilson route. They could go the Justin Fields route. But I don't believe any of those are as sure a thing as just giving Dak Prescott his money. If you compare it to somebody like Watson, you don't even have to give up draft picks.
So then if Dak Prescott goes to New York, then what happens to our Cowboys team? Then without a quarterback, who do you think is going to be able to replace Dak Prescott?
I have no idea. Maybe they'll draft a quarterback at 10. Look at Mac Jones, for example. I don't think that's the right way to go for Dallas, but it would not be the first time Jerry Jones took his own personal ego with a grudge against a player or a coach and sunk his own team because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. Jerry Jones does have that kind of track record for sure. Yeah, I think another part of this hot take is just that it's already expected to be such a crazy offseason from a quarterback perspective. Deshaun Watson is probably on the move. Russell Wilson is maybe in the ether of that regard. And Will, you don't just sit on the laurels of the hot take. You don't just wait on this stuff that is already so hot. You add more to it. Dak Prescott is leaving the Cowboys. That's huge. I feel like you're maybe an agent of chaos right now, Will. I don't know.
I mean, listen, if I have the power to control these things, then he'd be a New York Giant. But all I'll say is this is going to be a crazy off season with quarterbacks. I think the craziest we've ever seen with the amount of guys talking about moving. I think there's definitely a move where players are trying to dictate, like you see in the NBA, where they want to go. And we'll see how successful they are in that. And in the case of Deshaun Watson, I've been relatively pessimistic as to whether or not he's actually leaving from a Watson perspective. But yeah, I don't think any possibility is too crazy in this offseason.
I'm going to bring it back to Dak Prescott just for one more time. I know we've talked about his compact fracture, but I just want to take a shout out to our boy Alex Smith. Nobody thought that Alex Smith was going to be able to play football ever again, and he came back and brought Washington back into a playoff game. So having an injury like that obviously is super serious from Dak Prescott's situation, but it is possible for him to come back 100% and be that franchise player. So I'm just going to nail it in the coffin one more time. I think Dak Prescott's here to stay. I think he's going to make that comeback that nobody's expecting, just like Alex Smith did.
I think most GMs in the league recognize what you're saying. I'm not convinced Jerry Jones does.
Interesting stuff. Love the conversation that we've had on the show today. Thank you so much to both of you for jumping on with me and helping me relive a little bit of my glory days being on Sports Scene. That's going to do it for the show today. That's going to do it for the show today. Thank you to everyone for watching and following along. Make sure that you also check out Annenberg Media on social media, Annenberg Media Sports. It's at Ann Media Sports. That's ANN Media Sports. I feel like you could probably figure that part out. So follow that on the socials and make sure that you check in next week when we will be back with another episode.